Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we grab a whole stack of sources, could be articles, research, even our own notes, and we basically pull out the most important bits of knowledge and insight for you.
Yeah, think of it like your shortcut. You get the interesting stuff, the surprising facts, just enough context, hopefully, without all the heavy lifting.
Exactly. And for this deep dive, what have we got?
Okay, so our sources today are mainly a batch of recent Nigerian newspaper headlines, looks like from mid-June 2025. Plus, there were some other interesting little facts scattered in the material we looked at.
Right, so our mission, yours and mine, is to guide you through this stack. We'll unpack these headlines, try to get a handle on the key events, the trends, both in Nigeria and maybe globally where relevant.
And connect the dots a bit. The idea is for you, the listener, to get a pretty well-informed snapshot of what's going on, without needing to read every single piece yourself.
We're doing the sifting, pulling out those core insights, maybe some surprising details just for you.
Okay.
Okay, let's dive in.
All right, so if we look at the political scene first, just based on these headlines, a few things pop out. They touch on, well, accountability from the past, but also current governance stuff.
Like what?
Well, for instance, there's this report that the MKO Abiola family is demanding details on a N45 billion contract debt.
Wow, okay, that's significant. It pulls on a major thread from Nigeria's history, but shows it's still, very much a live issue today. Accountability.
Definitely. And speaking of big money and oversight, the sources also mention these Knox criticisms, basically about the National Assembly.
Nigeria's federal legislature, yeah.
That's the one. Reportedly inserting something like N10.96 trillion into budgets over just 4 years.
10.96 trillion. That's a number that's bound to raise eyebrows. Questions about, legislative powers, budget transparency.
For sure. And then moving down to the state level, the situation in River State keeps showing up in the headlines. Seems Wyke and Fubara, the key players there, had another reconciliatory meeting.
So that power struggle, it's clearly still simmering, not quite put to bed yet.
Doesn't look like it. And related to that, the River State Caucus in the National Assembly, they apparently condemned remarks by Senator Dixon. He suggested maybe imposing emergency rule there.
Okay, so high stakes. And Wyke himself.
He's quoted saying he doesn't regret naming an international conference center after President Tinubu. So you put these pieces together, it paints a picture of a pretty deeply entrenched political fight playing out very publicly.
Yeah, you can see the different angles. And it's a good reminder, too. Sometimes headlines need a second look, right? There was that story about NDDC projects being disrupted in Cross River.
Right, but then officials from Cross River came out and clarified, saying, no, that disruption didn't actually happen.
So always worth checking, verifying those initial reports. Good point from the sources.
Absolutely. Okay, moving beyond just state politics, the headlines touch on, electoral rules and national policy, too.
Oh, yeah.
In Osun State, the electoral chair there apparently said only local government officials elected in 2025 can run the councils. That touches on, ongoing debates about local governance.
Legitimacy, structure, all that. And nationally.
The Senate is urging the federal government, the FDG, to regulate cryptocurrency.
That's huge. Crypto regulation is a massive global discussion. So Nigeria is leaning into that policy direction, it seems.
Looks like it. And maybe even more structurally significant, there's a bill for a 6th state in the Southeast region. It's passed its second reading in the Senate.
Whoa, a new state. That's a major constitutional shift if it goes all the way. It could really change the political map, representation, and everything.
Big implications. Now, shifting gears a bit, let's talk economy and development. Again, the headlines offer, kind of a mixed view, some challenges, but also maybe some signs of recovery.
Okay, like what? Any good news?
Well, there's mention of the Naira strengthening. It hit 1,590 to the U.S. dollar in the parallel market. That's the unofficial one people often use. And apparently that's narrowing the gap with the official rate.
Right, and that narrowing gap is often seen as a positive sign, isn't it? More stability, maybe FX reforms working?
Potentially. And there's a quote from the minister saying Nigeria is now reaching stability after, that big fuel subsidy removal.
Yes, the subsidy removal. Huge policy shift. Big impact.
Definitely. And to protect revenues, the FEG is reportedly getting tough on pipeline saboteurs, prosecuting over 100 vandals, the sources say.
Shows that securing infrastructure is still a massive challenge, even with the economic reforms.
Absolutely. And on another development track, the FG is apparently talking to Chinese firms about reviving the Ajakuta Steel Company.
Ajakuta, that's been a national project, almost a symbol, for decades. Mostly dormant, though. Reviving it would be huge.
Yeah, massive industrial potential there. And Minister Omahi also pops up in the headlines talking infrastructure, claiming the Enugu-Onitsha Road is being built to last 50 years.
50 years. That's quite a claim.
Hmm.
What else did he say?
He also defended President Tinubu on legacy projects, arguing the North actually has 52% of them. So specific claims about government focus and, trying to show equitable development.
Right, putting numbers out there. And we also get little snapshots of business, don't we?
Yeah, just a quick one here. SUNU Assurances, an insurance company, reportedly paid out N$3.28 billion in claims, but also recorded a N$3.59 billion profit. Just gives you a little peek into that sector.
It's interesting how you get these different levels. Now, what really strikes me from these headlines is just the sheer range of opinions about the government, the direction of the country.
No, absolutely. You've got really strong endorsements, like Tomplo quoted saying, "Only Tinubu can revive Nigeria." Pretty direct.
Very direct. And then Governor Saludo of Anambra.
He's quoted, too, saying Tinubu basically rescued the economy from collapse, restored financial solvency, so strong support there as well.
But then you have completely different takes, too. The sources mention Alisa Agbakoba, the senior lawyer, suggesting Nigeria actually needs more decentralized government.
Right. And you have political denials. Former President Jonathan apparently denying a social media post floating a 2027 presidential run.
And activism Omoyole Sowore saying he'd sue if they tried to give him a national award.
Yeah. And clear opposition voices, too. The Obedient Movement reportedly slammed Tinubu over a comment he made about the opposition being in disarray.
And wasn't there something about the Labour Party?
Yeah, the Abori-led faction is mentioned faulting a court ruling about council polls in Lagos. So active political opposition is definitely reflected.
It's not just national-level sparring either, is it? We see state-level stuff, too.
Exactly. Like the Katsina governor praising former head of state Abdusalami Abubakar on his 83rd birthday, hailing his statesmanship.
And Governor Mutfwang in Plateau, he pardoned 2 convicts, but also called for efforts to strengthen democracy generally.
Then you have direct aid programs. The Ondo governor unveiling a N$1.2 billion conditional cash transfer scheme. That's direct help to vulnerable people.
And in Anambra, Governor Saludo released over N$6 billion, which apparently helped unlock a much larger N$12 billion education grant, UBS grant, for the state.
So real policy actions at the state level, and then more routine but still important urban management stuff like Imo State planning to relocate street traders in Owerri.
It's a lot happening simultaneously. Yeah. And you mentioned a historical fact earlier.
Oh, right. Just a little nugget from the material. Did you know the very first political party in Nigeria, the Nigerian National Democratic Party, NNDP, founded way back on June 24th, 1923.
Wow, 1923.
By Herbert Macaulay, often called the father of Nigerian nationalism. It just, puts all this current political activity into a much longer historical frame.
That's a really useful perspective.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've covered politics, economy, but these sources also paint a pretty stark picture of, security challenges, legal issues, social stuff.
Yeah, unfortunately, the security situation features heavily. There's a really grim report about herders killing 25 people in Benue communities.
Awful. And the military's active elsewhere, too.
Yes. Reportedly taking out 21 illegal refineries and arresting 23 suspected oil thieves. It underscores that whole fight against economic sabotage, the crude oil theft problem.
Which ties back to the economy we were just talking about.
Exactly. And the threats seem quite varied. Bandits reportedly killed 1 person, kidnapped 9 others in Niger State.
And Anambra had some bad news, too.
Yeah, 2 separate incidents reported. Police arrested 2 people after security forces killed a 17-year-old in one event. And in another, police arrested a 19-year-old for alleged kidnapping and murder. It shows concerning threats in different areas.
Definitely concerning. Okay, switching to the legal side, what did the sources highlight there?
Yeah.
Any big case updates?
Well, there's the appeal court reportedly acquitting the former head of NIMASA, Akpobo Kemi. That was a big N$754.8 million fraud case, so an acquittal there.
Okay, but the anti-corruption agencies are still busy.
Oh, yeah. The EFCC reportedly declared an oil firm boss wanted over a different alleged fraud and $976 million subsidy fraud, this one.
And on the national security front?
A Chinese national was reportedly arrested over terrorism allegations. That's quite serious.
It is. And the sources also show action against maybe more common types of crime.
Right, like Bauchi police catching an alleged online scammer linked to like 40 fraud cases, and 14 people arrested in Jigawa over counterfeit currency.
So tackling fraud at different levels. What about court sentences?
We saw reports of 4 Filipinos and 8 Nigerians jailed for internet fraud and cyber terrorism. And also, a Canada returnee getting 3 months jail for assaulting a KAI official in Lagos. That's the Kick Against Men Discipline Agency.
Shows the range of things going through the courts. And police accountability.
There's a mention of the FCT police in Abuja investigating alleged harassment by officers, apparently based on a viral video, so responding to public pressure there, it seems.
Interesting. What about the Nandi Kanu case? That's always high profile.
Yeah, updates there too. The court reportedly admitted a transmitter allegedly smuggled into Nigeria as evidence in the Radio Biafra case. And the DSS, the State Security Service, reportedly told the court that Kanu incited IPOB's sit-at-home order, which has been so disruptive in the Southeast.
Right. Those details give us snapshots of these major ongoing legal battles. What about human trafficking?
There's a positive note there, relatively speaking. In LPT, the Anti-Trafficking Agency and the Defense Intelligence Agency reportedly rescued 20 foreign victims and arrested 3 suspects, so action being taken.
Good to hear. Any other sort of miscellaneous legal or sector issues?
A couple. Police are apparently probing some internal crisis in the Musicians Union, PMAN, and reportedly cleared Pretty Okafor of financial misconduct allegations. And sadly, there's reported outrage from Port Harcourt about a realtor who allegedly stripped female birthday celebrants naked at a nightclub. Just awful.
Truly disturbing.
And then Bolt drivers protesting in Bayelsa after one of their members was murdered, raising serious safety concerns for gig workers.
Yeah, that's a recurring issue. And on the flip side, the government seems to be building capacity against cybercrime.
Looks like it. The FG reportedly inspected the south annex of the National Cybercrime Center down in Bayelsa. So infrastructure for tackling online crime.
Okay, so beyond crime and security, what other social or sector-specific news popped up? Health sector.
Yeah, couple things. The Nigerian Medical Association in the FCT, Abuja, is reportedly threatening a strike because 3 doctors were sacked.
Okay, labor issues there.
And relatedly, a forum chair apparently stated that health workers who got COVID-19 were basically abandoned. So lingering grievances from the pandemic period within the health sector.
What else? Education. Diplomacy.
A quick diplomatic note. The French envoy stated that 1,150 Nigerians studied in France. In education, Lagos State is apparently harmonizing its school calendar, standardizing it.
And public health efforts.
Big polio campaign launch mentioned in Sokoto, a collaboration with UNICEF, deploying over 2,700 teams. That's a massive, crucial public health drive.
Definitely. Any unexpected news? Natural events.
Yeah, a windstorm reportedly damaged NYSC youth service camp facilities up in Gombe State.
Oh, dear.
And then there was that whole drama at Lagos Airport. Involved Air Peace Airline and Senator Oshiomhole. Very public spat.
Right, I remember seeing that. What was the upshot?
Well, the aviation minister, Kiyamo, reportedly ordered a probe. And the airline operators of Nigeria came out saying Oshiomhole's attitude was unacceptable. So definitely made waves.
It did. And finally, a link back to historical justice.
Yeah, Amnesty International reportedly called on the president to declare Ken Saro-Wiwa innocent. That connects today's discourse right back to the Ogoni struggle and human rights issues from the past.
Okay, so that covers Nigeria pretty extensively. But you said the sources also had some global glimpses and other odd facts.
Yeah, just a few things that broaden the lens a bit. It's always interesting how these local headlines sit alongside major international events. Remind you, we're all sort of interconnected.
True. What were the international ones?
Pretty heavy stuff, actually. Reports of at least 78 killed by Israeli airstrikes on Tehran, and Iran firing back after an onslaught that reportedly targeted nuclear facilities.
Intense escalation there.
And also, Ukraine reportedly receiving the bodies of 1,200 dead soldiers back from Russia. Just stark reminders of ongoing conflicts really shaping the global landscape.
Yeah, very sobering. But there were some lighter or at least stranger facts, too.
Definitely lighter, or maybe just mind-boggling. There was that story about a guy who survived a plane crash back in 1998, and years later, an Air India survivor just happened to sit in the exact same seat number he'd been in during his crash. His reaction was part of the story.
Wow. What are the odds? That's incredible. Almost unbelievable. And the Venus rainbow thing.
Oh yeah, the did you know fact. A rainbow on Venus isn't called a rainbow. It's called a glory. And apparently it looks like colored concentric rings.
A Venusian glory.
Yeah.
Sounds way more dramatic than a rainbow.
Doesn't it? And then back to Earth, a specific historical date. Today, in history, noted June 14th, 1982, as the day the Falklands War ended. British troops took Stanley, Argentine forces surrendered. 74 days it lasted.
Right. A significant event from relatively recent history tied to that date. And finally, there was a social gathering mentioned.
Yeah, the 90th birthday celebrations for someone referred to as Uncle Sam. It was notable because of who attended President Tinubu, Governors Obarov Wari and Mba, Wole Soyinka, Soba, Fashola, the Olu of Wari. Quite a cross-section of Nigeria's prominent figures.
Shows those networks and connections across different sectors.
Exactly. So when you step back and look at this whole stack, headlines and a few facts we've really bounced around. From, historical debts like the Abiola contract issue to massive budget figures, the whole River State political drama, economic signs like the Naira rate or Ajakuta plans.
Through to serious security problems, banditry, oil theft, legal cases, from fraud acquittals to cybercrime convictions, social issues in health, education.
And then touching on global conflicts, weird coincidences, historical markers. It's a lot.
It really is. It highlights just how complex things are, how much information is flying around every day.
Yeah.
So based only on this specific snapshot from these sources, what patterns or takeaways jump out at you about Nigeria, maybe the world?
Well, just from this material, it definitely paints a picture of a nation in flux. You see major policy discussions happening, subsidy, crypto, maybe even new states. You see the economy trying to find stability, but facing headwinds like infrastructure security.
Yeah.
Politics is clearly very dynamic, contested at multiple levels. Security remains a huge, persistent challenge across different regions. And the legal system is busy processing everything from high-level cases to everyday crime. It also shows how local Nigerian events are completely interwoven with global trends and conflicts. It feels dynamic. Lots of moving parts, lots of challenges, but also efforts towards change.
That's a good summary. It is a lot to take in, but hopefully doing this deep dive helps you, the listener, make a bit more sense of it all quickly. You get the main points, the connections, maybe some details you missed without getting totally swamped.
Right. We did the sifting, so you don't have to. Now, maybe a final thought to leave you with, pulled from the source material itself, there was a quote included in the stack that kind of stood out. "No one is any more or any less important than you are."
Interesting quote.
Yeah. So thinking about that idea, that fundamental equality, and then looking back at all the challenges and opportunities we just talked about from these headlines, the political struggles, the economic efforts, the security crises, the legal cases, what does it suggest about the kind of collective effort, that might be needed for progress or stability?
Good question.
And maybe more personally for you, the listener, looking back at everything we just covered from these sources, the Abiola debt, the budget figures, River State, Ajakuta, the security reports, the court cases, even the Venusian glory. What specific headline or detail stood out most sharply to you, and why?
Something to chew on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Until the next one.